My name is Sophia, and I am 16 years old. I live in a city that is always busy, with people running around, never having enough time for themselves. I grew up in a family that valued education and hard work. However, there was always one thing that I never seemed to get enough of: social media. From the moment I woke up in the morning, I would grab my phone and check all the latest posts on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. It was the first thing I did before even getting out of bed. I loved seeing the pictures, the videos, and reading the comments. I felt connected to the world in a way that I couldn't describe. My life seemed to revolve around it, and I spent hours every day scrolling through posts. The more I scrolled, the more I felt like I was living in a world that was so different from the one I actually lived in. I would watch videos of people traveling to beautiful places, eating delicious food, and having fun with their friends. It all seemed so perfect, and I wanted that life too. But the more I compared myself to them, the more I began to feel that something was missing from my own life. I would spend my entire day glued to my phone, checking messages and refreshing my feed. My friends would tell me stories about their day, but I was too busy watching videos on my screen to listen. My grades in school began to drop, but I didn't notice it at first. The endless scrolling became my escape from reality. But one day, everything changed. It was a regular Saturday morning, and I had just finished my usual routine. I had spent hours on my phone, watching videos and posting pictures. As I sat at the dining table, I overheard my mother talking to my father about my grades. I had failed my last test, and my parents were concerned. My mother, in particular, seemed upset. She told my father, "Sophia spends so much time on her phone, but she's not focusing on her studies. She's not even doing her homework properly. I'm really worried about her future." Hearing those words made me feel uncomfortable. It was like a wake-up call. I had been so focused on the digital world that I had neglected everything that truly mattered. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my mother's words. How had I let things get so out of hand? I realized that I was losing control of my life. Social media was taking over, and I had no idea how to stop it. The next morning, I decided to take a break from social media. I would stay away from my phone for one whole day. It seemed impossible, but I knew I had to try. I turned off my notifications and placed my phone in another room, away from my reach. At first, it felt strange. My hands itched to pick up my phone, but I resisted. I spent the entire day doing things I hadn't done in a long time. I read a book, went for a walk with my parents, and even studied for my upcoming test. It was hard at first, but as the day went on, I started to feel more focused and clear-headed. But as the days passed, the urge to check my phone grew stronger. Every now and then, I would sneak a glance at my notifications or check a few posts. It felt impossible to stay away for too long. I would tell myself that I was doing great, but within a few hours, I was back scrolling again. This cycle continued for a while. I would try to stay focused on my studies, but the pull of social media was always there. I tried to set boundaries, but every time I got distracted, it became harder to get back on track. It was as if the digital world had a grip on me that I couldn't escape. But I refused to give up. I knew I had to change, and I couldn't let this addiction control me anymore. The next few days were filled with small victories and many failures. There were times when I stayed away from my phone for hours, focusing on my homework. Then, there were times when I would give in and spend hours on Instagram, feeling lost in a sea of pictures. Each time I failed, I reminded myself that this was a process. I couldn't expect to change overnight. But deep inside, I knew I had to try harder. Days passed, and I continued my struggle with the overwhelming desire to check my phone. Every day felt like a battle. There were moments when I felt victorious, like I had complete control over my time, and then there were moments when I fell back into the old habit of endlessly scrolling. It was exhausting, but I kept pushing myself. One morning, as I was sitting at the breakfast table, my mother noticed something unusual. I had been more focused, more present. I was actually having a conversation with her without my phone in hand. She smiled at me and said, "Sophia, you seem different lately. I'm proud of you." Her words were like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right path. But I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't just about spending less time on my phone, it was about finding balance in my life. Social media wasn't the problem. It was my addiction to it that was preventing me from living a full, healthy life. I realized that my time was precious, and I had to spend it wisely. I had to make room for things that truly mattered, like my studies, spending time with my family, and taking care of my mental health. I knew I had to be honest with myself. Was checking my phone every few minutes really worth it? Was it worth losing sleep over, or even losing my connection with the people around me? I decided to set some ground rules for myself. I would limit my screen time. I set a timer on my phone to remind me when it was time to put it down. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. Slowly, I began to notice that I was becoming more present in the moment. I would sit with my family during dinner, and we would talk about our day, without any interruptions. I would go for walks without feeling the need to check my phone every 5 minutes. I was rediscovering the simple joys of life that I had forgotten about. But the journey wasn't linear. There were days when I felt like I had made so much progress, and then there were days when I would slip back into my old habits. One afternoon, after a particularly stressful school day, I found myself on my phone for hours, scrolling through Instagram and watching videos. It felt comforting at the time. But deep down, I knew it wasn't helping me. I had a choice to make. I could continue down this path of distraction and temporary satisfaction, or I could take control of my life. I decided to take a step back and reflect on why I had turned to social media in the first place. Was it because I was bored? Was it because I wanted validation from others? Or was it because I felt disconnected from the world around me? I realized that in my search for connection, I had neglected the relationships that truly mattered, the ones with my family and close friends. I needed to build deeper, more meaningful connections, not just online, but in the real world. I started by making small changes. Instead of scrolling through my phone first thing in the morning, I began reading a book or writing in my journal. I would spend time with my parents, ask them about their day, and listen to their stories. I started to appreciate the moments that I had been missing while I was glued to my screen. I also started focusing more on my studies. I had fallen behind in my assignments, but I knew I could catch up. I set specific goals for myself and created a study schedule. At first, it was challenging. I had to resist the urge to check my phone every 5 minutes, but slowly, I began to see the rewards. My grades started improving, and I felt more confident in my abilities. One day, after weeks of hard work, I sat down with my mom to talk about my progress. She was so proud of me. "Sophia, you've come such a long way," she said. "I can see how much effort you've put into balancing your time. Keep it up." Hearing those words from my mom filled me with pride. It wasn't about how many hours I spent on social media or how many followers I had. It was about the effort I was putting into the real-world connections that mattered most. But even though I had made significant progress, I knew I wasn't completely free from my phone addiction. It was always there, lurking in the background. I had to be mindful and intentional about how I used my phone. I had to remind myself that it was just a tool, not the center of my world. One evening, I was talking to my best friend, Emma, and I noticed something interesting. We were both sitting on the couch, but instead of scrolling through our phones, we were talking about our dreams, our goals, and the things that really mattered to us. It was the kind of conversation I had been missing for so long. I realized that in order to connect with others, I didn't need to be constantly on my phone. I just needed to be present. The next week, I decided to spend an entire weekend without checking my social media accounts. I wanted to see if I could go an entire weekend without feeling the need to check my phone every few minutes. At first, it was difficult. I felt anxious and disconnected. But by the end of the weekend, I felt a sense of freedom. I had spent time with my family, gone for walks, and even started a new hobby, painting. I realized that I didn't need social media to feel fulfilled. As the weeks went on, I continued to make small changes in my life. I spent less time on my phone and more time doing the things that made me happy. My grades improved, and I felt more connected to the world around me. But more importantly, I felt a sense of balance that I had never felt before. I wasn't constantly chasing after the next post or the next like. I was learning to appreciate the present moment. I knew that I wasn't perfect and that I would have setbacks. but I also knew that I was on the right path. I was learning to live a life that was not defined by the screen in front of me. I was learning to find happiness in the real world, not just in the virtual one. In the end, I realized that the key to a balanced life wasn't about completely abandoning social media. It was about finding a way to use it without letting it control me. It was about making time for the things that truly mattered: my studies, my family, my friends, and most importantly, myself. As I sit here today, reflecting on my journey, I want to share something important with you all. I know that social media has become such a big part of our lives, but it doesn't have to control us. We have the power to control how we use it, and we have the power to break free from the addiction that can slowly take over our lives. When I was constantly on my phone, I thought I was connecting with people, but in reality, I was disconnecting from what truly mattered. I was losing touch with my family, my friends, and even myself. But the truth is, we don't need to be glued to our screens to feel valued. We are more than our social media profiles. We are real people with real dreams and real relationships. If you feel like social media is taking over your life, I want you to know that it's okay to take a step back. You don't have to be on your phone 24/7 to feel accepted or to be successful. It's about balance. It's about finding time for the things that truly make you happy: your studies, your family, your passions, and even your quiet moments of reflection. I know it's not easy, and there will be days when it feels impossible. There will be moments when you want to check your phone just to pass the time. But I promise you, there's so much more to life than what's happening online. It's okay to disconnect for a while and reconnect with the people around you. Your true value doesn't lie in the number of likes or followers you have. It lies in your kindness, your passions, and the way you make the world a better place. So, if you're struggling with social media addiction, don't give up. Start small. Set boundaries. Be mindful of how much time you're spending on your phone, and make sure you're making time for the things that matter most. It might take time, but trust me, it will be worth it. Remember, you don't need social media to define who you are. You have the power to create the life you want, one where you're present, focused, and truly connected with the people around you. Take it one step at a time, and soon, you'll find yourself living a life of balance, happiness, and fulfillment. Believe in yourself. You can do this.